So welcome again, everyone. I think Joe is joining us now. We're having some issues with our live streaming, but we will be recording this so that we can share it across all of our platforms. I'm just waiting. There he is. My wonderful co-host, Joa of Insight Myanmar. So for those who don't know, I am Zoe Wild, founder and executive director of One Light Global. We're an international humanitarian organization that works around the globe, perhaps mostly with refugees, but also with Indigenous communities. And we've partnered with Insight Myanmar to bring awareness to the crisis in Myanmar and to raise funds for humanitarian works within the country and for schools in Mizoram refugee camp. And many years ago, I lived in Myanmar, so this is an issue close to my heart. And everyone here is from Myanmar or has lived in Myanmar for a long time, much longer than I did. And our topic today was introduced by Theory, who was in our last panel, and is this topic of yearning for home and what it means to be far from our home and unable to return to our home. It's something I think everyone can relate to around the world to some capacity. But when people are forced to leave their country, it enters into the psyche on a much deeper level. And we wanted to give space today for people to share their experience of what this really means. Joa, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone who's here, and we'll be figuring out this live stream soon, so hopefully getting the link to go up on Facebook, but happy to have the people that are here now. And this is quite a powerful topic on the question of what it means, what home is, and what home means for different people, what the loss of home represents, and better understanding both on a personal level as well as overall in the country, how these current times of what so many people have been going through, both in the last 2 years as well as for ethnic minorities from for many years before. And so these are the topics that we'll be delving into. We thank everyone who's joining us live, everyone who's going to be coming into this as we get started on this and other platforms, and everyone who's listening to this weeks or months after the fact, that through audio or video, for this will be shared for the archive. And with that, let's get going.
Great. So we are live on YouTube. I put the link in the chat. And we'll figure out Facebook soon, hopefully. Our technical genius is not here today. We wanted to open today with a poem, a Chin poem called Kapi's Dentures. And we're going to have Simon read that because he speaks Chinle, and then Thett will read the translation in English. And rather than take this poem apart and analyze it, we're just going to have the audience sit with it and let it land in its own way for everyone, and we'll come back to it later. So whenever you're ready, Simon.
Thank you so much, Joey. So let me start to read this poem in Chi. Kapi hadeo kaha kuchunga kapi arol konfang bang antla fama ha telomi hani he kani khel he kani len ti asi zan kamanga kaha he angkwa pat len chang seru ka iya tam di chak kamang kapa fa chamang kam helnak kapa ha chu seru ha sui ha phangkhat he kapa ni achimton kapum chunga aman fak bek chu kaha chi ni chun napi he nan ha an ilo ati jing fatin ti shai chunga achami aha chu alaki kapi chu rol a eiton a edi a kheng tol bang aha zong atol na akut ni in he tia kapi hi in mai dum pi in khoi kan man a chok khau te lo a hoi le zong in chung in leng an chok khau te lo in akan leng mi pau adot big a hoi le bang bia an irwa le ton adot big a hoi le he chun an thong man an I thei te lo adot big a hoi le kong atu le akan chimbal lo adot big a hoi rak ngai ma mo a ha atol mi kapi nu le zau in atu nuni korwat ton a ha bang phangkhat nu phangkhat angkal takolo mo ti in. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Koko, Thett, if you would read it now in English, for those of us who are not familiar with Chinle. You might have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Zoe. The poem is by the Chin poet, the noted Chin poet ID, who usually writes in Burmese, and it's been translated into Chinle language that was read by Dr. Simon just now by Slai Tile Awai Tan, the Chin translator. So my version is going to be in English, translated from Burmese. ID, Kapi's dentures by ID. Like corn seeds, Kapi used for chicken feed. My teeth fell into my cupped hands. Flashing my toothless gums, I smiled my broadest smile in my dream last night. My teeth are full of cavities. Kapi's daughter I am. I must chew my bones to the dust. Some of Kapi's teeth are porcelain. Kapa, who boasts a single gold tooth, says, in my whole body, my teeth are the most precious. Your teeth look like nappies, says Sisi. Every morning, Kapi takes her denture out of a water cup to breakfast. After each meal, she'll hold the dentures with both her hands. She will sponge them with soap and rinse them in water as if she were doing the dishes. She is too feeble to walk out of her garden. All her friends are confined in their homes too. Everyone who visits our house is her best friend. They keep chatting and chattering. She's lost touch with her friends of her age. She has never told her grandchildren about her best friends. Did she ever have a best friend? Looking at Kapi from behind, washing her false teeth, her granddaughter cannot help but wonder, perhaps one after another, her real friends have abandoned her, just like her teeth. Thank you.
Thank you. It's such a powerful poem. I'm looking forward to unpacking it a bit in a little while.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good to start out with some poetry and the original and English language to get our minds on this topic. And from there, let's learn a little bit about our different panelists. So I'd like to ask each panelist if you can give a short introduction, 1 or 2 minutes about yourself and your background and your biography before we all start sharing. So because Koko Thett, because you just were sharing the poem, why don't we go first with you? If you could tell a little about yourself.
Hello, my name is Koko Thett, and I am a poet, poetry editor, and literary translator based in Norwich, United Kingdom. And yes, I've been a poet as long as I remember. And of course, I've done a lot of other things in my past reincarnations, but poetry has always been a mainstay for me. And I enjoy poetry. But these days I am writing poetry full time, and I've been writing poetry full time for nearly 10 years, maybe more than 10 years. But anyway, yeah. And sometimes I also teach poetry I give 40 workshops, literary translation workshops and creative writing workshops and so on. Yeah, that's it about me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Let's go to Inetha next.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good morning, and my colleagues and friends in Myanmar. My name is Inetha. My professional work is refugee resettlement caseworker. I work with the Refugee Resettlement Agency. I'm also a co-founder of I Am Kenya, organization led by young adult youth to help assist displacement and internally IDP and refugee across the Thai-Burma border.
Great, thank you. Co-Simon, let's go with you next.
Thank you so much. And it's really great to see you all. And then I'm so honored to be here. And then my name is Simon. And then my background is I'm a medical doctor. And then I used to be working in the rural setting in Myanmar before coup. But then after the coup happened, then yeah, I am with my team and then working for our people in the way that we can for especially in the border course and of course in Chin State as well. And I'm from Chin. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Akari, to you.
Hi, everyone. So glad to be here. Before the coup, I was just a young professional kind of working in private sector development in Myanmar. I was born and raised in Myanmar, although I have lived abroad for a few years, but I was always interested in supporting the development of my country. So I always came home and wanted to live in Myanmar. Since the coup, I've been working, I started working on coordinating CDM support groups and running my own CDM support group. And that slowly progressed to volunteering for different NUG projects in various capacities. And currently I am consulting for a nonprofit that trains activists in Myanmar virtually, and I am serving in the Ministry of International Cooperation under Dr. Sasa.
And for all of our participants, there may be some listeners in the audience who don't know these acronyms. So if you can just, when you say CDM or NUG, if you can let people know what you mean by that, it'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, and Theory, let's hear from you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Theory, and my background is in research and media. And I was in the country for a year after the coup. And then since then, I've been moving around. So I'm not in the country anymore, but really nice meeting you all. I'm so looking forward to discuss with the discussion about home, which a topic that resonates me a lot. And so I'm so looking forward to discuss with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's stay with you, Theory, for a moment. With you referenced how this is a topic that means a lot to you. This is, and indeed, our second panel here was driven by something you said in our first panel, where you had an extended period of talking about how the loss of home and what that meant. And we all talked privately after that and realized we wanted to have a series of ongoing panels, and that for our next topic, this would be a very vibrant and powerful topic to spend an entire session on. And so to kick this panel off, I'd like to start with Theory and ask you, what is it about this topic that is so personal and so meaningful and so important to share on your side, and also to impart to those Burmese communities around the world, such as yourself, as well as those foreign communities, to better understand what you're going through?
Thank you, Jor. So like I am, I've been traveling a lot since I was 20, so I don't really have a feeling of home like attached to a place or anything. And I've been like working around, and I live abroad and just live in the country, and just a bit more like the so home is not necessarily a physical place for me. It's more about the sense of belongings and also more like attachment just for me. But for some people, it could be from it can be the land, because land is the identity, or it can be the physical home itself. In my work, I work a lot with the documentation, and I work a lot with I work a lot in the conflict affected area. So I came across people like losing home, but it does, even though I've been documenting, it have never really personal to me until I actually have to leave home like a year ago. Because when people say this, like, oh, I don't want to leave home and my home is bunny, or like when the state media announced that, oh, people burn their own home. And to be honest, I didn't really have much of the personal attachment to it before, when people are talking about this. But after this coup, a lot of us have to leave home. Even though we are living in the same country, in the same town, we just cannot live at our home. So we just have to move around from different safe houses. And a lot of my friends have to leave home to the jungle and fighting. And a lot of my friends have to leave home to the foreign country. And a lot of the people that I know in the past, they've been relocated. They lost their home by the airstrikes or by different conflicts. So yeah, for me, like the topic itself, whenever the word home it comes, it's very difficult for me. I've been controlling now because this is just the beginning, but like whenever it's a home, it's really something that is a sense of belonging, and we want to go back. And a lot of my friends wanted to go back. Like every conversation that we have, and we are fighting, it's not because we just want to go home. And even people abroad who applying for the asylum status and everything, all they were saying is, in our conversation is all about home. We want to go home. And a lot of people continue to hold on to the Burmese citizenship, even though the country kicked us out, because we have that common goal that we want to go home. So that's that topic itself is like, somehow resonate among me and my friends, and broader like people I work with. Yeah, I'm gonna stop here. But
Well, as you just pointed out, Theory, you're all here because of circumstances that forced you to leave Myanmar. But home is this concept that is complex and illusory and means so much to so many people and different things to so many people. Is it land? Is it landscape? Is it familiar plants and animals? Is it familiar faces and culture? Akari said something beautiful last time we spoke, that home is never needing a map, and is it the food? Is it the values, the religion, the art? Is it, we work with indigenous cultures where it's like the place where your placenta is buried, or where many, many ancestors and generations have lived. And there's stories that are passed down from generation. Or is it a place that we belong and can be moved from the location? A country is really a concept, that with these lines that were drawn by other people. It's not a real thing. And yet when people are forced to leave their country, there's so much pain. So we just love to hear from anyone who feels called to speak about what home is to you. Theory's just shared a little bit about that for her, but from some of the other voices. And Atha has also said in the past something so beautiful about how home, you can miss a home that you've never been to.
I guess I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, the concept of home itself is quite complex, and even to me, I still don't have the definition for home. But when I think of the term home, often I associate myself with a land that I grew up never having lived there since I left when I was 2 years old, due to armed conflict, due to the fighting between the military junta and the Karen National Liberation Army. And so as a Karen who live in the territory held by the KNU, we often face a military campaign, military offensive. And in fact, the military have carried out a scorched earth campaign against the Karen and other minority groups across the border, right? And so wars was a common things. And so when I was 2 years old, we have to flee to Thailand and have lived in Thailand for most of my childhood. And because we live in a refugee camp, there are never enough about talking about food, talking about times, talking about things that I believe every children, woman, man have the rights to. For instance, basic food security. We don't have that. Basic health, basic utility. We don't have any of that. So certain times where would sitting on the kitchen table and mom would tell a story about, in Kothule, the current state, which we call Kothule, it means land without evil. In Kothule, if you want to eat these vegetables, you just go to the backyard and pick it up. If you wanted to go eat fish, you just go to the stream and harvest it from there. If you want to pick up fruits, you just walk a few meters from you and pick it up from the trees. And to me, that was truly like a heaven. And that's because we were in desperate situation. We were in refugee camp. So when I imagine home, I imagined the jungle, where theory says some folks flee from the urban city to the jungle. To me, the jungle, the mountain was my home. And that highly tied to the Quran. We call it Sekenyapo, the Quran identity. You may heard the Quran Kayin term for others, but to me, the truest identity of Kenyapo literally translate to children or descendant of simplicity or minimalistic, which is really interesting for like language perspective. You see, human, we call human people as the same as Quran Kayi, the term called Kenyapo. And so to me, that term is quite fascinating and how we live our life, especially the Karen folks that live across the Thai-Burma border, they call the hill tribe in the Thailand side, right? And so, yeah, to me, when I think of home, I think about waking up super early in the morning, hearing bird chirping, a rooster, and pigs and chickens and whatnot. And to me, home is a place where we got full of natures and also a place where I don't have to explain the language that I speak, the customer that I practice. For instance, when a guest come to our house, our responsibility is to treat them with a full stomach. And that's something that I don't have to explain to others, right? And when I go to someone's place, that is something that is expected, right? And so, yeah, things that I don't have to explain to others about my language, where I came from, the customer that I practice, so that's to me a concept of home. And still, I can explore this concept called home, and I still don't have the full answer to it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That reminds me of something in one of Thett's poems, or something he wrote in an essay about home is not only where we belong, but where we're visible. Thett, I don't know if you'd like to speak to that. Are you muted?
Yes. First off, I'd like to comment on what Thierry said earlier about exile, right? Salman Rushdie, the famous Indian writer, Salman Rushdie, wrote that exile is the dream of return. So, yeah. And I've seen in the UK, many Burmese exiles who have been in exile since the 1960s, since the 60s, and they told me, we are here for like every 5 years. We have to renew our dream of return. We keep renewing that. We don't really want to. We keep telling ourselves we don't want to remain in the UK, but we are stuck in the UK since the 60s. So I think exile is really a dream of return, and many people in practice are unable to return home, right? That's one thing I like to add. And another thing about the concept of home, one juror asked me about the what I have in mind about home. I emailed him an extract from my forthcoming essay, which I can read. For me, home as a territory, as property or land, home as a place where one's placenta was buried, home within the parameters of religion, identity, or sovereignty, home as space where one is not only comfortable but visible, home as a place of family and friends, home for one's favorite food and flavors, home as terra firma or body of water in which one wants to be buried, and most importantly, home as a nation. No matter how I define home, I realize that after an absence far too long, not necessarily in exile, that's another question, I'm not an exile, home remains elusive and illusory for me. So what is home to me is, for a poet, language is home. I write in Burmese and English, and Burmese is my home language, and English is my second home language. So yes, that's what I want to say about home. And as for the notion of exile, I think no one can exile anyone from language, right?
That's right, though. In the US, the government tries to obliterate languages just for that reason.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit more to this difference you see? You said you're not an exile.
Yeah, okay. I don't consider myself an exile. I already returned to Myanmar several times. I lived in Sagai. In 2017, Sagai, the city of Sagai, not the rural area of Sagai. I lived there 2017 and 2018. So I do not consider myself an exile, because exile, the word exile denotes activism and political activism and opposition against a regime. So I am not a campaigner. I'm not an activist. I'm just a poet. So I'm not an exile in that sense. Yes.
Mm. Well, that may lead us to acutely. Would you like to share a little bit about your experience and what home means to you? Are you muted? Acutely?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I just came back in. I dropped out. Sorry.
Did you know the question, or did you need us to repeat it?
I think everyone was answering what home means to them.
Yes.
Strangely enough, it's the topic of discussion, but it's the thing that I really can't put my finger on what home means to me. I mean, I miss the land.
And Koko, that was just mentioning that he doesn't feel like an exile because he was not involved in political opposition to the government. And so I thought you might have a different perspective from your own experience. I think maybe we've lost you again.
Hello, sorry, I just came back. So for me, I think home is just a bit about just the land and all the common sites and
Since acutly's cutting out a lot, let's go to someone else. And we'll come back to you, acutly. Joa, did you have a next question?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I'd like to ask Simon the next question. And when we're on this topic of looking at home, and for some people, the last 2 years, for the Burma community especially, the last 2 years have really developed an acute loss of home and the familiar area. And yet for ethnic people, this is something that they've seen the devastation and loss of home and the uncertainty of being able to claim home due to the incursions of the Burmese military, the Tamada. And Simon being from Chin, the Chin part of the country, Chin communities, I wonder if you can speak something about how you have come to regard home in Chin communities where there really has not been safety or security or even any kind of comfort of being able to live as you like for generations. And so how would you describe the sense of home in Chin communities growing up? And from your own perspective, the home, the sense of home that was created in those native communities, and then how was that sense of home threatened or damaged by the military presence?
Thank you so much, George. So yeah, I just would like to start with one quote. Home is where one starts from. So home is something that is very unique, and I will say that this is something, a cell, I will say in the biological term, like cell that we have gathered together, a small group, and one small group gathered together, and then we build a community. And then one community builds another, and then that's what we call a nation. So home is something where we start. And it is very important that, like Thierry have said, home may be physical or even is it like sense of belonging, and then there's attachment. And then someone may not be saying that, when we say home, they may not be specific to the land, because let's say someone who live in urban, maybe they stay in like 5 floors of the building, and then he may not, or she may not be really prescribing of something. But as a Chin people, and as a Chin person, when I say about home, I think it's very important. The home is where we start to learn. I will say the home is where we educated, or school, where we school for every life, not only the educating, but also lifestyle and all. And this is where we learn our own language. This is where we start to learn about how to love and how to respect each other, to our siblings, to our parents. And this is where something is very important to be, starting. This is something that our journey start. I hope in this world, I think in some point, we all may have a home that we start our life. Our life started, I will say that. So in Chin, for way back of 70 years, yeah, like what we have saying, that the languages are very important in the literature, because this is where our identity is. If I'm going to say that I'm Chin, then surely people can ask me, what language do you speak? And then they will say that, I will say, yeah, I speak this language. And they will ask, do you have any literature for that? So this is something that very common questions that people will ask me if I say about my identity. But in Chin State, after, independence from British, and then coming to this Myanmar, when the Union Burma is formed, and then especially after military, this Nawin, from the era of Nawin, the Chin people, we are not able to practice our own literature, our own language. We have our people, we went to the school, but in the school, we don't have right to, have our own language, our own literature. This is a burden from national, through the government. I would say that this is like a very strategic plan to eradicate our language. But we Chin people start to learn our literatures and then our language throughout the Sunday school from religion perspective. And then Chin states were very peaceful, and it's a mountain. And then we have a huge forest. And then our daily life used to be like all our farmer, they will go every morning, they woke up, they went to their own farm and then bringing all firewood and coming back. It used to be very peaceful and it's a very natural way that we used to live. But after 2021, there's a coup happened. None of us, that all the security and all the safety that we used to hold and all the peaceful mind that we have, like a blink of eyes, we lost. And now we are really afraid even to go to forest, because if something happened in or landmine, or if there's some, if there's some fight between happen, how can it happen? So everyone become anxiety. And then even Chin is a very mountainous, and then this is the military also have, strategically have abandoned, and then we don't have proper transportations and communication until 2016. Before, most of the place in Chin State, we have to travel by foot. And then I would say Chin State where I think even, it's larger than the world, I would say, because the world from Myanmar, if we would like to travel to US, maybe it will going to take time for hours, not a day. It's like 7 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that. But in Chin State, we need to travel at least 7 days to walk one-to-one, because we don't have proper transportation. So I just would like to end that the home that we I would say that the home is where we start. And the home is where we start to learn our society, cultures, socials, and then all the religions. This is something that's very important to maintain. And then I think this is something we can say maybe it can be physical, but also it's like emotionally that attachment that I would say. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Simon. And to follow up, when we're looking at this loss of home about that has taken place since the coup, one of the things that this panel has been doing, both this panel and the previous panel, has been to, as well as some of our overall efforts, has been to try to fundraise and to bring in funds to be able to support these refugee schools and projects that are happening in Mizoram. And this is something interesting to look at and to better understand, but this is also very sadly and tragically the need to have to provide a sense of education and familiarity to all of these Chin children who have now lost their home and are just the sense of education is not just a purpose of being able to give schooling, which is of course important, but it also has the added benefit of familiarity, of routine, of community, of something like that. And so I think this is a really good chance to follow up with you and check in and learn more about what's been happening in these camps that you've been supporting and overseeing. What is the situation with these thousands of Chin refugees and Chin children especially that have completely lost their home? And what are you seeing in the camps? What are you seeing about the loss of home there? And perhaps you can describe something about the education program and project as well that this fundraising is going towards.
Thank you so much. Yeah, going back to the camps, yes. Of course, the camp is something that they wanted to stay here, or this is something that they have destined. Of course, not. This is something temporary, and then I will call it again. They exile here just for temporary safety, and then the people in the Mizoram, the Chin people, none of us would like to stay here for forever. But of course, if it ever we have a good chance that we all want to go back to our own home and our own place and settle back there. But currently, this has become a very challenge. And then when we come to India, we don't like, it's not like, this is not like traveling, it's not like shifting one place to another place. This is something that we run for our safety. Because of that, we don't bring any belonging to us. We come here with a zero. But when we arrive to here in the border, and then the people realize that, as I have said a while ago, even way back in Myanmar, we are not allowed to study or allowed to learn our own literature in the school, government setting. So we used to set up our own way of adapting and a way of learning for our own literature, and to keep it up that, the sense when we come here also, we feel that we need that to do something for our children. And then our children are so lost here. And then, of course, we, Mizo and the Chin, we are, even speaking of historically, we are brother. And then most of our language are similar. Our dresses are similar, even our foods are kind of similar. But in terms of culture, we are belonging to Myanmar and they belong to India. In that sense, we have a kind of a little bit, difference of this culture, but then our children have to adapt for that as well. And in some point, they have a language barrier. And then now what we have done is that we try to, talk with each of stakeholder or community leader or host leader in that particular area. And then last two years, we have shared the school with them, but not in the exact, but we extend with the bamboo and the using of this tarpaulin. And then our children, our kids, they don't have a table where they can sit. They don't have a desk where they can write. Just imagine a 5-year-old kid sitting on the floor. That is, we don't have any, even we don't have, how do you call this? Just the floor, I mean the ground, literally in the ground, sitting on there. And then they are just start to learning to write on their thett, just sitting without any help, support for written. That's become very challenging for them. But another way to say that they don't want to give up, even though they are very young guys, just 5 years old, but they sense that how this military are brutal, how this military are rude, they don't want to give up. So even though they don't complain at all, they just come, who are supposed to be, playing, but they were very minded that they come to school. And then all the teachers are CDM, CDM means civil disobedience movement, who joined in this revolution, and they are teacher. They come here, and the teachers start to teach them, and then we are using Myanmar syllabus, but also some a little bit of Indian side because we are in India, in Mizoram, and then also we are trying to make sure that they also they should not be forgetting of Burmese. So we also put especially for one Burmese class, and the rest will be English and our own language. But there are many challenges out there. As I said, the parents have no income. They themselves become victim and then a refugee. Zero income, and then supporting of their kid is not easy. And then the board, of course, refugee board, they are just there just to support them, but they don't also have any income or any source of funding. So they are just voluntarily trying. The board, of course, refugee board, they are just there just to support them. But so, and just to finish, I just would like to say one word that, yeah, right now with the circumstances are very challenged, but the people of Myanmar or the people of Chin, we don't give up. We are trying our very best, even though in this worst scenario or the condition. But even you can help us more, and then we can sustain and we can do something better for our people, for our future, because the young generation, these kids are our future hopes and our future leader for our country. And we really need to support them and we really need to help them. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we have Akari back with a good internet connection. So
I just want to say before we go to Akari, anyone who would like to contribute, you can do that at onelightglobal.org/Myanmar. We're building 9 schools and providing school supplies and providing Chin teachers with salaries. So anyone who wants to do that, I put the link in the chat. And for anyone watching after, it's www.onelightglobal.org/Myanmar. And that's a joint project of Better Burma and One Light Global. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Yes, and everything is definitely appreciated that can go towards this project of the schools that Simon has just described. Moving next to Akari, who I think is back with a more stable connection. I think as we're looking at this process of having to flee home, of course, when we're checking in with those ethnic minorities, this loss of home has been continual and something that they've been facing for generations, tragically. Akri, you mentioned that Yangon was your home, Myanmar was your home, and you found yourself in really a situation of acute danger and really terror that made you realize that you had to urgently flee for your own physical safety. And so this loss of home for you came quite sudden, maybe not unpredictable given what was happening, but sudden and very scary. So I wonder if you can share with us, as far as what is safe, what you were doing at the time to support, I believe it was the civil disobedience movement, and what dangers you found yourself in that precipitated the need to have to urgently flee.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, as you said, I mean, I didn't leave because I had to, in the sense that it wasn't like there was a 505A out for me. But I did leave because I didn't feel safe doing the work
civil disobedience
I was
movement.
doing. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, there was some echo, but yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So, you know, it would be that, you know, during the day, I would spend my time coordinating, well, in the beginning, I used to go out protesting a lot, and then realizing we needed to change strategies quickly because protests alone weren't going to cut it. So I started coordinating a lot of CDM support activities, you know, planning different fundraising campaigns on a lot of Zoom calls with CRPH at the time, going around and picking up and delivering cash to be sent to CDM people, like passing out flyers on the street during the day. And at night, I would be awake, preparing myself mentally for what life inside insane might be like, you know, and like, how would I survive the torture or the rape? And would I break if I got tortured? And if I got tortured, whose names should I give? Like, who are people who have left the country or who are already arrested? Like, you know, and that took a huge toll on me. And it was also just, I was really scared because I had a lot of close calls. So like my neighbor was shot in front of me. Sorry. So it was just a lot of psychological trauma that was really hard to live with, and just wondering every day, you know, like, am I going to be next? Is there going to be a knock on my door? Like, what do I do if the soldiers come? So it was really, really difficult. And I think that's really why, like, I wanted to leave. Like, after like going out in the street, having my neighbor shot, trying to drive him to the hospital. Luckily, an ambulance pulled up just as they were about to load his body in. And I'm like, if I had driven him to the hospital that day, I don't think I would be here. So a lot of like running around, having a lot of like close calls with soldiers where like at the end of the day, like, you know, there was so much adrenaline, but at the end of the day, I'd be like, wow, like if one thing had gone wrong, I wouldn't be here today, you know? So it was just a lot of psychological trauma, and it was a lot of burden. So I really felt like I had to leave for my own physical safety, but also, you know, for my own psychological safety. It's like, you know, I was like a nutcase. And I just feel, and I have a lot of guilt for leaving too. And I feel like there's a lot of young people who, like me, who could leave, who had the means to leave, you know, they left. And it's a huge brain drain that's going to further impact the development of the country. And it's just really sad. And I feel so fortunate to be out. And I feel like the fact that I can even be sad about missing home is a privilege, you know, that a lot of people don't even have. And I remind myself that at least, you know, it's not like my home got like shelled or torched, and I'm not like, you know, my sibling or my child just died and I'm carrying all my belongings on my back and running through jungles. You know, I left comfortably on a flight. Like, I was so scared until the flight took off, but still, you know, I keep reminding myself of how fortunate I am. So yeah, I guess, yeah, so that's really the reason why I left. I don't have to leave. Sometimes I think of going back, like joining PDF along the border, but I don't think I would be very useful with a gun, and my fear of bugs in the jungle. So I don't think that's really a good option for me. So yeah.
Right. And as you had to flee out of this urgent sense of danger, I wonder if you can also share here something you shared before this meeting when we were all getting together and talking. You were, and this also relates to what Koko Thett was saying about these generations of exiles, and that you had mentioned something about the 88 generation having to resettle outside of the country, what they thought was temporarily, as they look to come back in. And I wonder if you can take off from there and share your reflection on that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So so after, of course, after I was safely out in the States, I continued working, and I connected with people who were from the 88 generation who had left because of 88, and then had to settle down here and have built new lives, and they're very successful and happy, and they're all back rallying the Burmese people in their communities to support the resistance from abroad. And while I was working with them and learning their stories, I realized that that might be me in 20 years, like decades later, still so far from home, having to settle in a foreign land with children who will never know what Myanmar is or speak Burmese. And it just makes me really sad and worried about how long am I going to be stuck here, and is that going to be my story, and will I lose my identity as I try to assimilate here. And actually, I was so homesick, so I always tried to find like Burmese restaurants or Burmese grocery store. And I met a Rohingya man who was there, and he's been away for more than a decade. This is long before the coup, and was telling him how sorry I was for the persecution that they've faced. And he told me, he's like, no matter how many great curries I make, no matter how many great curries I get to eat here, I still miss home, and I could barely stop myself from crying. So yeah, I'm just very worried that that's going to be my fate as well. And I hope that we can go home soon.
As you speak, Akri, it's really, it's like in my mind, I'm just flashing over and over so many different people that I've met in the last 7 years and 8 years at One Light, from Syria, from South Sudan, from Ethiopia, from all over the world, and how this similar ache. And I'm curious if this experience, how it's impacted your view of the global refugee crisis. And if anyone can answer that, but Akri, if you had a sense, if there was a change, if there was some feeling of that was different, having now experienced it yourself.
Yeah, I think that it's similar to what Theory said, in that, well, she was working directly with people who've lost their homes, but usually you hear about it, and you obviously, I sympathize with them, and I'm wondering, I can't imagine the conditions that would make them leave. But now, having experienced it firsthand, like all those doubts about, because sometimes I did have doubts, like maybe you don't need to be, you didn't need to leave, but you just left because you thought that life was better elsewhere, and it's actually, that there are people who are in far worse situations, or whatever. I did honestly have some doubts, but I think now, experiencing firsthand, I definitely sympathize, like empathize a lot more. And yeah, I guess that's really, really how it's changed for me, is that I've walked a mile in their shoes, so to speak. And I just, yeah, I understand that longing for home, that they're not here just because they want to be, but maybe because they have to be, and that we all want to go home at some point.
Yeah, when I was in Serbia working with refugees living in a train station, I mentioned this to you before, someone wrote on the wall, "No one leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark." I'm curious if koko, thett, or thett, having been, in a sense, refugees, or I know we're not using the word exile, but having been away from home for so much longer than some of these others, if you have some words for them.
Well,
So-
I wrote a poem called A Survival Guide for Exiles, right? So it might be quite useful for many of us. I mean, first off, I would like to clarify, Zoe, that when she said that I do not oppose the government, it's not the government. I oppose tyranny in all form, right? So as a poet, I oppose the junta, the Burmese junta, and I oppose the tyranny. I oppose tyranny in all form, and I think there is tyranny in the resistance as well, and there's tyranny within me as well. So I oppose all kind of tyranny. So that's one thing that I just want to make it clear, right? So I'm in opposition against tyranny of all sort. That's one thing. Another thing is the notion of identity as home is a very complex question for me. Thett was saying earlier, she started traveling around 20, and then there's no attachment to place, for her as home. For me, it's even more complicated because I was born in Rangoon, but my parents moved around a lot. So I was raised in Shan State. So my most important years, I was in Shan State. So I was a Burma in Shan State. And when I returned, and then university years, when I returned to Yangon, I was a Shan in Burma region, right? So my identity is complex. So home as identity for me is unclear as well. This is why I can sympathize with people who have a ground to hold on to, which is very nice. For me, there's no ground to hold on to as identity. But anyway, about exile, I would like to just read this survival guide for exiles. One of the poems that will be published in Daedalus journal. A survival guide for exiles. For the sake of your health, get the hell out of bed first thing in the morning before tuning into news and gossip from your homeland. Don't collect anything you cannot carry with you. Be prepared for a life on the move. Don't expect your hosts to have ever heard of your country's name. Don't expect them to be responsible for your well-being. Expect them to give you a family name. Just as a second for God is a life for humans, your 1 year in exile may translate into a lifetime in your homeland. Don't burden yourself with the weight of the world. For some people, exile means business. War and pandemic mean business. Do not associate with exiles who will add more woes to your burns, be them compatriots or foreigners. Your nation state you have clung to may go up in smoke overnight. The nation within you, no one can destroy. Don't be a trauma clown, analyzed and anonymized by anthropologists, turned into a feature film by filmmakers, or your suffering co-written and edited by privileged white writers whose lives have nothing in common with yours. Tell your story in your own chosen form. Revolution will not be less perfect without you. Don't look too far. Even the Mother Earth has her own fever, her own dukkha. Don't look back. When you left, it was spring. Today, it might as well be a cold, dark, bitter winter. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm curious if any of the other participants, I see them posting hearts, would like to respond to that.
That Coco said that was really touching, and in fact, it is the survival guide for an exile. I'll agree with you. Yes, when I reflect on my experience and this concept of home, as somebody who never really truly lived in my motherland, there is a true longing for returning. And I believe the main reason is that when we live in refugee camp, that's not a home. Refugee camp is not a home. It's actually they call it temporary camp. And because it is temporary camp, there is some sort of desire to either force us to move somewhere else or to return somewhere else, or in what Coco put it, be prepared to move. So my family, especially my mother, somewhat conditioned us, trained us to return back to our motherland, and to return so we can live the way we wanted to live as a free man walking on earth. And part of that is it wasn't involved going to school, becoming educated, be the teachers or engineer. It was simply to be a farmer. I have met so many farmers in my life who are genuinely happy with their life. I have met so many, have walked so many who, as somebody who live in developed countries, I look at these individuals living minimally are the most genuine and happiest people I met. Whereas I have met so many people rich, well-established, have massive resources, networking, whatnot, or I see that person is not as happy as the person I met, as the farmer that I met in the current state. I've been to Shan State or in Pathain. All these folks are genuinely happy just to be a farmer. So to me, having been in a refugee camp was the concept of home, was simply be a farmer and to live, to care for my family and to care for my mom when she gets older, my dad. And that was how I was conditioned and trained to return back to our home, right? Coming to the United States was never part of the calculations, was never part of the preparing process. It happened all of a sudden where we weren't prepared to come to the United States, right? But because we have no options, returning back to our motherland is not a safe alternative. In fact, going back to there may contribute to the ever conflict that continue to exacerbate today by those that take out arms and go out because of vengeance or wanted to quote unquote pay back for what the perpetrator have done to them. And so in my case, when coming to the United States, number one was not part of the intended goals, but moving to here, we weren't prepared for it. But yes, we have to make this place our home because we have no other alternative. And so when I came to here, there was a new hope for something else that open to me, my family, that was never granted or given to us prior to move to here. And as refugees, you do not have any rights as human being. You cannot practice your political ideologies. You cannot practice your freedom of speech. There are certain things that as a human being, you have basic rights that you do not have living in a refugee camp. And so for me, when I came to the United States, the longer I live here, the more I love to return home. And I think that's contributed to my intellectual curiosity of minimalism, simplicity, and especially in a global world where we're facing extreme environment, right, due to human actions that contribute to the destructions of the early place we call home. And then when I reflect on the current identity, and especially those that live in the jungles on the mountains, they live very minimally and they are happy with it. And that itself, the more I learned about the world and how things are moving around, the more I want to be and to live amongst those that live in the mountains, that practice simplicity, minimalism, and also live day to day where they rely on the earth. They depend on the earth and the soil every day. And and when Dr. Simon was mentioning that we have to walk everywhere we go, and to me that was another concept of home, where we do not rely on modern transportation, right? What we have on our body is what is given to us is that is what is granted to us, and we utilize that to the most capacity. And to me, that's a healthy concept of home, where we rely very little on modern technology, but on those ourself, our community, and the animals that we rear. And to me, that concept, I long for it, I yearn for it, and I want to return to that. If I cannot return because I'm not considered a citizen of that state, I'll make it happen here in this place and try to live to the best of my capacity, taught and showed by those that live the other world where I used to call home.
Yeah, I just want to add on Koko that poem, and I think it's very beautiful. All his poems are, and especially the Guide to Exile. First of all, I also don't consider myself as an exile, because like Akri said, like we chose to leave home. It's not that we have, in a way, yeah, it's indirectly forcing us out of home, because if it is a normal situation, we don't need to leave, but not necessarily. It's more like I still have a choice. I get on the plane and I had a choice not to leave the country, and I still have a choice to still go back, because I still have a passport. I still have, I have a means to go back, but I just don't know if it is safe enough to go back. So it's it's a privilege for us, like Ikri was saying, like then we are talking about this now because we are still alive and we still have home that we can go back to, and we still have a sense of belonging. We have a community or identity, whatever the home is. Like we have been defining home into different ways. And if we take Gogoda's definition of home, like language, we still speak Burmese. So home is not missing there. It's still there. It's with us. We have been carrying home with us. So about the survival of, living as an exiles and everything. So I don't consider myself as an exile, but also I consider everything as a temporary for now, because I've been talking to my friends yesterday. I don't take the name of my friends who are my Burmese friends who are abroad. When they give me their phone numbers, I don't put it in my phone as with the name, because in my mind, it doesn't come into realization that, oh, this will be forever. It just it's just for temporary, and they're gonna change the number. We're gonna go back to the country, and we're gonna just be doing that. So it's and also whenever we're saying home, like it's in a way that we romanticize, like, okay, all the great place, all the beautiful but actually I come from Yangon. It's not that beautiful. It's not. It's a crappy little town, city actually. The YMBS, the buses would go into different directions, and I even make jokes that we have million ways to dine in Myanmar with because of the warfare, because of the the raining season, when the power, the electric wires into the flood, and then you can get electric shock, or like you can die from that too much chemical things, like chemical fruits and everything, and the food quality is not that good. And like the street food that we were talking about, food, I love them, but they're not really hygienic. But like that's part of it. When we say home, like when I don't want to be like, oh, the home is just so great, we want to go back. Actually, no, it's not that great, but we just like to go back to that. At least for me, I just like to go back to that little crappy, not little, like crappy, busy Yangon, where a lot of things. Rats are running around, but that's the home that that I want to go back where, but not alone. You know, even the thing is, I can always go back home alone, but it won't be the same because my friends are now there, and the people that the familiar faces, the people that I usually see, are not there. So when I mean going home, I really want to go home, but not alone, because the celebration or whatever, just the happiness, or it's not just to be alone, because now I'm free, at least in different way, and I'm safe, but it's not just for me alone, because I want to do it together. So the in terms of the home, in my sense, it's also that includes a sense of togetherness. We want to do it together. Maybe home is not the past. Maybe we don't need to return to the home in the past. Maybe we have different definition. We're from different background, all of us. We've been defining home into different way. And also, I think this is a time, maybe home is the future that we want to build, because this is a time we can include, like, especially like diaspora. When we talk about home, we want to go back to the land and something. Some diaspora may not be part of this. So we really want diaspora. I really want diaspora also to redefine home. And we want, maybe this is a place we redefine home. Maybe home may not be physical place, may not be a belonging, may not be a language, may not be an identity. It may be something. So it's very interesting to learn all of the things. But my point is this, you know, there's a chance. I don't really, I miss home, like the physical home, but at the same time, I don't quite miss home, because everywhere I go, I make home. And in a way, I have a community, I make friends. And so I barely feel lonely. Yeah, of course, I miss food and everything, but I can manage it. I can manage it well. So yeah, I like Koko said, I really agree that we're not the tragic, I don't remember the exact word, like we're not the trauma puppet and something. And that's not how I want people. I keep saying that's not how I want our friends abroad to remember us. We are living, and we are talking about home and something, not to being seen as some kind of victim who are missing home and who needs to go home and help them and little human being. That's not the point. The point is more about that we determine to go home with our own effort, but we want people to understand. And also, like I've been also telling other people, either inside the country or outside, we have a lot of us has a survival guilt. And I really like Koko that words, you know, just the end of the poem. So which is very similar to what I usually told my friends, like, hey, you know, the world will go on with or without you, with or without us, we are nobody, but it is better because of you, because of your existence. So, you know, we are gonna go home, everyone, all of us, maybe physical home or sense of belongings or whatever. It's maybe the future that we need to build. That's what I want to say.
I also just would like to add a little bit more, please. So yeah, today we are missing home, and then as we all have said, this is not something that we wanted. This is something that we have chosen. It's like, I feel like giving of example that the home is something we call family. We have our own parents, father, mother, and then brother and sibling. We're supposed to be harmony, and we should supposed to be respecting each other, and then building that small society to become very good. So the environment, whether good or bad, this is the choice of the family. And even the father get always drunk and always beating to the mother, I don't think that family will become a very sweet family. That is not something where we will all want to believe. And today, even this military, like, while Koko could have already said, the way they treated to the people of Myanmar is like inhuman. I mean, it's like unimaginable. Then now we are dying. We are, you know, a lot of young people and a lot of, you know, even to the military side, and even to our side, people are dying. Actually, those who are dying are our brother and sister. No matter what, we are still Myanmar. We're still in that land, same land. Why we have to be fighting? Why we have to be killing each other? Why we have to be, you know, blaming each other instead of coming together and doing something good? But of course, this military never want to surrender, never want to say a word of sorry. This is the harsh things that we are facing right now. And then, yeah, Terry have said, we wanted to go home, but selfishly, not just myself, for safety, maybe. If we wanted to go alone, maybe if we do some favor or doing something to the favor of the military, then maybe we may able to go right now safely because they will be letting us to enter. But the things why we don't want to go, because we are not safe. Why? The military will always oppose whoever say something not good to them. They want to be calm. They always say, even, they are being brainwashed that they are the savior. I mean, they are like the savior of Myanmar since ever. It was not really true, actually. And then they have to identify and they have to now understand that they are no longer needed by Myanmar people, the people of Myanmar. We don't need them. We don't like them. It's like even a parent, maybe the father have authority to say something to the children. Also, the father also have right to listen to the children, the voice of children sometimes. Not whatever he say may not be true. So sometimes the kid may also say something as feeling that's the really good thing for the family. But now the people of Myanmar are saying that we don't want this dictatorship. We don't want to be ruled by somebody for the sake of their family. We want our justice. We want our freedom. And then we want to live harmoniously. And then the people of Myanmar, whether from north, from east, from west to whatever, we are a brother, we are not enemy. Actually, we can live harmony and then we can help each other. In that way, I don't think that today we won't be able to come and sit here and talking about missing home or longing of home. Because why we're saying this? Because if the Myanmar were safe, if our hometown were safe, then I don't think that we won't miss home. Because if we miss, we may go home anytime. As long as we will, as long as we want to go home. But today, even though we wanted to go home so much, but we have no choice to return. Because if we return, and if our life is at the end there, then who will speak on behalf of us? Today we are speaking for ourselves and then for our people. But those who are speaking today, if they are being captured, of course, they will be tortured and they will be killed. And the voice will be dismissed from this earth. And the words may go continue like you have said, and in the poem, Koko have said, we are nobody, but we can do somebody for our people. So today we are here. I mean, yeah, we really miss home. It doesn't mean that like literally or like something, but what we are saying, how we are trying to portray is that we have no right to go home. This is the problem. We have no choice. The military didn't give us any choice. So we need to come together and then find solutions and then so that we all can go home one day and then celebrate the victory and then practice our right, full right and our freedom, I think. So thank you so much.
Wow, Simon, thank you for sharing that. As you've all been talking, I'm remembering my time in Myanmar. I lived there from 2006 to 2008. And it changed my life because there's this very unique culture and taste and flavor to Myanmar. The experience of being there was so different from anything that I'd experienced in my travels and life prior to that. And when I think of it, I'm thinking of the sun and the smells and the people and the kindness and the way of being. And those tiny chairs in Yangon. I saw in the chat that Enetha was saying, before he dies in a foreign land, he hopes that we can all join a table together to enjoy pork offal skewers on the streets of Yangon. And as you were all speaking, it occurred to me that, if home is also people and this community, as I think it was Theory was saying, I don't want to go home if I go home alone, right? I want other people there. But it's also, I can have all those people in another country and that still doesn't feel like home. So there's this combination of place and people. But that as you're all forced out into the world, each of you does carry a piece of Myanmar, like that ineffable thing, whatever it is that we can't put our finger on. And you know, and I thought was speaking so beautifully to wanting to go back and to remember, you know, this, to live in this simple way and to farm. And if he can't go back, you know, can we bring that here? Can it be a little taste that you're carrying out into the world of Myanmar? And so I was thinking about that, and I was wondering also, from things all of you have said, what are the things that you did carry? You know, you've spoken of there's so little that you can bring when you leave. And I think many people here, you know, and right now in the US, there's these massive floods and fires. And I think it's a thought that people have now of what would I bring if I had to leave my home? And I'm curious, what do you carry? Please go ahead, Koko thett.
Yes, so we talked about her experience in Serbia, where there was a graffiti writing, you know, the nose of a shark, which is a very vivid imagery. One home becomes the nose of a shark. One has to leave. And I think, excuse me, I think one shouldn't feel guilty about leaving, you know, home. One home gets extremely hostile, right? Yeah, is one have to save oneself to begin with, to be able to save others. So I think I would like to also advise my compatriots that don't feel so much guilty for leaving, you know, the hostile land. And that's one thing. Another thing is home as eco. That really, really worries me these days. Ecosystem. You know, I would like to share a tragic sight that I experienced when I was living in Zagai, right? So one day I walked out of my garden in Zagai and I saw a chameleon, the reptile, a chameleon, on her return from her daily forage. She was running up to her nest onto a mango tree, which is my garden. So, but she was running up a mango tree, but the mango tree didn't exist anymore. It's only a stub of a mango tree because that morning my landlady felled the mango tree because my neighbor complained that the sap from the mango tree was dropping onto his car over the fence. Okay, the neighbor happens to be a Burmese Buddhist, and my landlady is a Muslim matriarch. So that they didn't get along. So the landlady had to oblige and pulled it. That means I cut the mango tree. So it was a very tragic thing to see that a chameleon running up a stub of a tree, looking up at the sky where, you know, her nest should have been, right? She was completely startled. And then chameleons change color when they are faced with danger or when they are faced with different, they respond to, you know, their emotions by showing different colors. So she was just showing different array of emotions by showing different colors like black, blue, and all that. You know, I could really sympathize at that point how confused or shell-shocked that chameleon must have been. And so for people to return home, if the home becomes the stub of a tree, what to do? That's the, yeah, that's the question.
Would anyone else like to speak to that? That's such a heartbreaking image. I'm finding myself having to stop myself from tears.
About what I bring from home is that I lost my baggage on the way to the US. So with the snowstorm, I never got it back. So my mom tote bags and I don't know, a few little here and there. I brought it, but then because of that, I lost them, and I just yeah, me too. So I lost them, and I don't really have much. So like I don't. That's the lesson, and I'm like, okay, I shouldn't attach to anything because things can get lost, and you never. It's not stable, it never been. It can get lost, so I never really get back. But there's one thing that I make sure that I had it. It's shui soap. They wouldn't know that shui sabya. I think a lot of people will know. That shui sabya is my stress release soap. So I still have it. I just brought it. I like to smell it, and it's a washing soap. It's very cheap, and washing soap you can get it in any random grocery store, but it's not Shuiwa brand because Shuiwa is a military brand, so I stopped supporting. But it's another kind that smell like Shuiwa, and I think a lot of people may know it's washing soap. So that's the thing that I brought from home. But other thing, I lost it, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. Maybe one day I will see it, but I don't know. It just I lost. I don't even remember what did I even lose in that package. But yeah, I still have Shuiwa sabya.
I'll speak shortly of that. So yes, when my family, we fled our home and resettled then live in Thai refugee camp and eventually moved to the US. We lost a few things, but when I went back to Burma for the first time after some 12 years, never been back. I went back, and one thing that I learned for the people of Myanmar and all other ethnic groups is that they always smile, right? There's always a smile on their face. And so when I came back, I always smiled, but when I went back to Burma, that reinforced also my identity too with the people there. And with the Tanaka, the smiling Tanaka, and that represent the people of Burma, and not just the beauty of it, but the resilience of the people. Despite having very minimal, folks continue to smile, and very that's something that they continue. That's something that ingrained in my mind when I came back. And so when I came back, I know I told myself that I will continue to smile for you. Even though I have all that I need here, the folks that I walk across the street, even on the street, many of who are homeless. I don't know why, but the image that stick in my head, ingrained in my head strongly, is that smile of women, children looking up to me and smiling. And there's that. Secondly, when I went back there, I saw there were slingshot that were sold on the street market. And as a Korean and somebody who live in the refugee camp, slingshot is an essential tool that we use to hunt birds and whatnot. I bought a slingshot and the rubber band because I couldn't find those in the US. The rubber band that they have in the US isn't that good. So I brought those two things. And last but not least, the people of Myanmar are very gracious people, and they give whenever they have. And that's one thing that I committed myself whenever I came back here. I'm continuing to carry that and give it more and more. And if you don't remember, not too long ago, Burma was rated as the most, #1 in the world for giving to others. And so that's something that we don't think about, but it tells us a lot about us as a people of this great nation.
Thank you. I know that Acre has been in and out on internet trying to get in. I just want to check in and see if she happens to be online at this moment. Acre, are you there?
Yes, I'm here now.
Yeah. Would you like to share anything?
Sorry, I missed the question though, but I heard everyone's responses. Is it what you brought with you?
You can pick up whatever question or response you'd like, given what you heard.
I guess when I think back to what I brought with me, I don't know. I was kind of in shock and trying to get the first flight out I could before everything shut down. So I don't think I can't even remember, I think it was a bunch of useless stuff like some clothes and board game, my important documents, just the practical stuff. But I think the most important thing I brought with me was my sister who didn't want to leave and who wanted to stay. And I don't know, she thought she could fight or something. So that's the most important thing that I dragged out of the country with me and fought tooth and nail to bring here.
Right. And Akari, now that we have you online, another follow-up question. When people have been sharing what reminds them of home, feelings, culture, people, smiles, smells, sights, sounds, objects, etc. What does home represent to you? How do you, or what is it that stands out that is most acutely missed when you think about what home was then, which is hard to recreate now and which you really long for?
I think that there's the smell of Yangon. I don't know, like whenever you fly back and you land and you go into the airport, there's just the smell of Yangon, and for some reason I really miss that. And of course I miss, those really crazy and noisy downtown streets with all the street food and all this chaos and activity going on this life out on the streets. So, living where I am in the middle of nowhere, where, as you can see, my internet doesn't work, I really miss that, and it feels really, really lonely with that, without that. And I just miss the smell of, the roads during monsoon. And I even miss, like, the villages up north in Kachin State, in Yajina, in Budao, where I stayed for just very short stretches of time. But yeah, I guess it's like that feeling of just missing, I don't know, a place, like a sense of belonging that I had. And like, for example, for Kachin State, just when I'm there, my body feels different. Like, it's like my bones know that I'm home, like in the home of my ancestors. Perhaps it's generational memories that are just embedded into me. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Did we lose her again, or Joa, were you continuing?
I
I just
think
stopped talking.
For the people that know that Myanmar is 80 or 90% Buddhist, and I know many are. There's also many Christians and Muslims, but the majority of people are Buddhist, and I think a few people on this call have that background. What would you say to those who ask you how you reconcile the Buddhist philosophy of non-attachment and letting go with this very real lived experience of loss? Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? Does it just make you feel worse? What's your experience with that? How do you hold it? That's for anyone who's Buddhist.
Well, I'm a Buddhist. Well, I was raised as a Buddhist, so I don't know. I think like that not attachment actually help, but actually it's not. It has nothing. It may not necessarily be with my religious practice or anything. It's more because I've been traveling place to place, and also I don't really have much of a attachment to physical home. And so, and also, a lot of unpredictable things happen in Myanmar. Burmese people usually don't like to save money in the bank because a lot of unpredictable things happen, and then they would rather buy golds or anything, and just, I don't know, and I wonder if it has more to do with the religious practice or just the political system that can whatever you own today, but then like the next day because of the political system and something it's all gonna get it away. And so I think we are kind of trained to be, well, Buddhist teaching, and also we're kind of trained by the political instabilities and a lot of unpredictable event. So we are kind of used to live in it. Just when something bad happen, we even smile, and we just like and it all said, people smile and something even, and we make jokes and something. So I think it's a combination of the Buddhist teaching and also the system make us practice Buddhist teaching into more deeper sense, maybe.
Sure. Well, life is always uncertain, but in some places it's more obvious. Right. I'm seeing all these strings of in the chat of the participants sharing different things that they miss and love about Myanmar. And I'm wondering if there's more things, if you'd each like to share something that you love about Myanmar.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to comment on smiles of Burma or other ethnic groups in Myanmar. I returned to Yangon the first time was in 2012, after I left the country in 1997. Okay, many of you were not born then, I think. So after more than 15, 16 years, I returned to Yangon in 2012, in the beginning of the transition. And the first thing I noticed was people were smiling less than when I left the country. And I talked about that to one of my friends in Yangon who was staying there, remaining there all the time. And I say, why don't people smile anymore as much as I used to know them? And he said, it's a good observation, but he wouldn't know because he was living there all the time. But I noticed that, and my realization is that even in a place like Yangon, people are under tremendous pressure. They have to, make a living under tremendous pressure with the daily grind and poverty and all that. So people are actually smiling less. They still do smile, but I would say smiles are hard to come by these days. Yeah.
We do have a question from someone who's watching that I'll read, and anyone can pick this off. The question is, so a lot of this conversation has focused on adults and the adult experience of losing a place of familiarity. This question, we talked briefly, Simon talked briefly about the displaced Chin children in Mizoram, and of course there are incalculable numbers of children who are displaced as internally displaced people, as refugees, as exiles, as new passport holders somewhere else. And this is quite a different experience. And so this question reflects those experience of children who are suddenly displaced and suddenly have a loss of home that in their young years, they're only beginning to understand. The question is, how do you think, just a moment, how do you think being displaced and resettling in tough situations will have an impact on Burmese children? Will this teach them to become more resilient or have a negative impact on them mentally as they continue to develop? So I invite any speaker who wants to address that or take that as a jumping off point to talking to looking not just from the adult's perspective, but shifting to looking at the displaced children's perspective as well, and what that means on a wider sense as a country and society at this time.
I'm wondering if Tha, do you have some experience of that since you work with resettlement here in the US?
Yes, of course. This is also, I can also answer this from a personal experience as well as somebody who grew up and in a refugee camp, then essentially moved to the United States through refugee program as a young boy, early teenage actually. Yes, there is, you prior to moving to here, you know, the current people, especially those lived in ethnic territory held areas, continue to experience language, what's the term? Somebody mentioned earlier about continue to have a system that wants to remove your native language out of education system, right? And so the current language are not taught in public school, even in the some in the current KNU territory, and that is because fear of repercussions, ramification of teaching the language Korean. And so a lot of language are being taught within religious institutions like the Bible school or Bible church, right? Whereas in public school, it can't be taught because of a restriction. And when you lose your language, you lose access to your history, you lose access to your ancestor knowledge and wisdom. And so even myself, growing up in that refugee camp for 10 years, go to school using the Korean language. When we came to the United States, have go through a simulation program. As the moment you step outside of your door, that's when you begin using the common language, the English, right? And so for personal experience, I slowly lose my native language in even speaking to the concept and terms that I learned in the here in the US. My parents never taught me. I never learned in my native language. So even if I want to express certain ideas and concepts to my parents, I'm not able to do that. So that caused a communication deficiency, communication issue and barriers, right? And because of this, there are things that we learn here growing up that we're not able to communicate it to our elders in our communities. Even the content as simple as say, I love you, right? Things that we don't say in our native language. And so that is something that I began to observe that becoming a concern for, especially for the elders who children, first, second generation are not speaking the native language. And you see how, you know, here in the United States, it's the melting pot, right? And so it's a perfect recipe for losing your mother tongue and in the process, losing your language, then eventually losing your mother identity, your history, your background, right? And so this is a common concern and a common fear for a lot of elders. And here in my community, here in the Korean community, we have children that have grown up here that able to communicate with their friends in English, but when they want to communicate with their parents, they're not able to do that. So that causes barrier, frustrations, and as a result, it can create even like family issues. So that's one of the main observation that I have seen is that language, right, can it becoming a concern to all our other parents. And there are so many psychological issues that I'm going to give the table to our compatriot here.
I just would like to also share a little bit more about the perspective from the children. So, yeah, I think it's a very hard to say, and it's a very complex, more than what we think, because just a young boy, let's say that just 5 years old boy, he used to be playing with his neighbor every day, and they go to school, then meeting, you know, in that very peaceful environment. Is a blink of eyes, it turned into a crisis. And then, you know, my family, I also have to evacuate them to here, the safe place. And then like I talk to them, and then it seems okay, but I know sooner or later gonna be happen something. So we just have to lock our house, just lock the door, and then, you know, bringing of nothing. And then coming to refugee camps in here, the border. And then I don't want to say about many kids, but just experience from my sibling. My youngest brother is just 7 years old. And in the morning when they arrive, travel of like 5 days, and then reaching to the border. And in the morning when he woke up, he said, I miss home. Because here he don't, all the people he sees become suddenly different than what he used to see in the back home. And then here here it's become very saturated. People are coming together, and then very saturating of in little camps, and then even they don't. Some people talk different language. Some kids, so even they are hard to communicate. In that moment, I feel that they will have how hardship they're going to go through as a kid because they don't know how to express it. And then these people are playboy, they really love to play in a young boy. But now they wanted to play, but they don't know how to talk to the people beside them because they have different language. And then it's become, I don't know how to say, it's really hard for them. And then he kept on saying that I miss home. And I miss my friends, the friends of the neighbor he used to play in the day before yesterday that they came. And now he don't see anymore. In that way that, it's become very much impact to the children. And also, secondly, even though they are children, but they start to learning of hearing of what the parents are saying. Of course, parent will be complaining and parent will be thinking of how to survive in the lands in the refugee camps. All the sense of talking, the young boy will not able to analyze it, but hearing of those become sort of, depression for them. Even they don't know how to interpret it, what they have hearing from the parent. And then the parent cannot secretly talk about those things. They come together, in refugee camp, they are very saturated. Where are you from? They are talking, and then they are bringing a lot of hardship. And the kids are listening those all, things, and it's become very hard for them. So I feel that if there anyway is there, I think this will be very strong also in the future that the people of us, I mean the Myanmar, we have to be really, resettlement and rehabilitation for this mental health to our the kids. I think it's a very powerful things. And then also, lastly, I would like to say is that is why I think the education is very powerful tool for remedy for the children. When they come to school, at least they are playing as friends and they are able to do something they want then in the house, because the house is just built up with bamboo or a tarpaulin, and some kids, they don't understand. They say, why my mom, I'm here, why don't we go home? I don't want to stay anymore here. Because in rainy season, the refugee camp is, it's not very well constructed. And sometimes the rain drop, and when in the winter it's very cold, they don't have enough blanket. They say, Mom, I feel cold, I want to go home. And sometimes the parent doesn't, they don't know how to answer for that. Seeing that is very painful. Another way to help them, we have this education program. I think this is a very one remedy for the children that we can do. And then lastly, I just would like to say one thing that you all may have seen a short video in Torrance State, just 4 years old, when they say the sounds of the airplane, when they say the airplane flying, something like that, they pretend the sound, and the kid will be, going down the safe zone. They're going to say that they will have to bow down and leaning just for protection of themselves. Saying that is very heartbreaking, because those kids should not be known those things. Actually, they are just innocent and know nothing. They are just play kids, But now, even they need to learn how to survive in that situation. So I don't know much how to talk it, but the feeling for the kid is in this situation is very difficult for them. And sometimes they don't know how to speak it, and sometimes they are left behind. Actually, they are the one who more suffer than adult, because at least we know how to analyze it. For them, they don't know how to analyze it, but those all become some feeling in it for them, in some portions about the abandon for them. So I don't know even how to express it. That's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We're coming to the end of our time together today. I know we could go on for hours on this topic. And just thank you, Simon, for sharing that. As humans, we all have a right to a secure sense of place. And especially as children, I think it can be so unsettling. If we don't know where we belong, if we don't feel safe, if we don't have a place that we can be ourselves without having to explain ourselves, or where we know that our people are and food that we can digest. And, we are animals, and animals have a place. They have plants that work for them and food that they eat. And there's a part of me that wants to tell you all to hang on as tight as you can, because for so many of us, that's been lost forever, for our ancestry. However, even just, I'm second generation in America, but even my grandparents were refugees. But even so, though it's so short, I don't know the place of my people, the places and the environments and the scents and the smells and the languages. And so I think so many of us in the world with this great migration become rootless. And there's a beauty to that when we can find connection and home in ourselves, and when we can share more with each other. And, with the diaspora, we learn more about our unity as humans. But there's also a great loss. And this loss of connection with land, which contributes to our disconnection from the ecosystem and from the planet that keeps us all alive, and that's home for all of us. So thank you all for sharing today from your hearts. I know it takes a lot of courage to touch into the pain of this loss and the hope for return. And I hope that sharing these feelings has helped to ease the burden, at least for a short time and in some ways. Again, for anyone who would like to support, for anyone who'd like to find out more about any of these speakers, most of them have done podcasts with Joa on Insight Myanmar, and you can find that on their website, which is insightmyanmar.org. And if you'd like to contribute to the schools where Simon is working, you can go to onelightglobal.org/Myanmar. And I know Joa's dream is to do these panels, I think twice a month. So we will be returning. Joa, was there anything else you'd like to say?
I would just like to really thank the people on this panel. This was for the amount of time I've spent in Myanmar, for the amount of hours I've logged having podcast conversations, for how much I've personally been involved since the revolution for the past 2 years. This was really eye-opening to me. I learned some things that were expressed at such a depth. I mean, I get emotional saying this. It was this was really powerful stuff you guys shared, and it really it taught me about the depths of the burden that you're carrying. It made me realize and I think the combination of voices was so powerful in terms of the personal experiences that you were reflecting, and then the poet's voice of Koko Thett coming with this incredible metaphorical language that tied it all together, and the chats about the small things that were being missed, and even the things that no one really liked that were being missed, of the all the different ways to die in Yangon or everything else. But it also spoke to, I think you really opened, all of you really opened up, and you were able to express from a depth of that was almost like the way I felt as a listener, which I'm privileged to be here. It almost felt like you were giving yourselves permission to tap into a pain and a burden that perhaps you don't really allow yourself to access, and that an audience isn't really there to want to hear and embrace. And beyond, and I think that it was the combination of the poems that the Koko Thett was reading and the personal experiences that you were sharing that really gave that indication of the depth of this pain, the weight of this burden, which I I thought I knew, I thought I understood that on some level, but the depth of which you were able to share really opened me up and showed me really how much you're carrying and how much you're holding, and that you gave yourself permission through the duration of this conversation to be able to share more and deeper, and just that incalculable loss. And then the fact that this loss comes from the form of an aggressor, of a violent and cruel aggressor that you've had to learn to live with while resisting, so that you don't, and to resist the aggressor in such a way that you don't become that aggressor yourself. Koko Thett tells us that he resists tyranny in all forms, tyranny in all manifestations, tyranny in the resistance movement, and tyranny in himself as well. My God, that's beautiful. That's just incredible, and where that ties in. So, I just want to really thank you for this, because I'm so moved. I'm so emotional hearing the depths that you've been able to share and open up. And I hope this has also been, this has been helpful for you in being able to feel safe in what you've shared and what you've lost and how you're trying to overcome and what you want to regain. And this will live on in podcast form and YouTube form and social media form. People will be listening to this that are not live, and they'll be able to access it. So I just wanted to share from my own side just how deeply I was affected in ways that I was not necessarily anticipating. As someone who had heard so much and been involved so much already, this was another depth. And with that, I as we close, if any panelists would like to say a final word or thought, then please do so.
And if not, perhaps we can.
Koko Thett.
Yes, thank you, Joa and Zoe. When Zoe said loss of connection with the land, I was thinking an ecosystem. I was thinking about climate refugees who may have lost their land for good, right? So for them, diaspora may be forever home. That's just my conclusive remark. Thank you.
Koko, that I was thinking if perhaps you could end with your poem, Ode to O. Would you be willing to read that? You're muted.
Not my own poem, but I like to read a poem from Picking Off New Shoes Will Not Stop the Spring. But written by Min A. It's about destruction of home and having to leave home. It's a short poem. I hope you can bear with us. And it's called Map of Myanmar by Min A. Map of Myanmar. All that remain are a pebble in my fist, a water bottle in my backpack, and a heap of bones. What's next? They asked. No next, I answered. No need to climb the mountains of the past. No need to row towards the rivers and rivulets of the past. The sacred text says, there is a whetstone here. There is natural gas there. What's next? They asked. No next, I answer. For a clue, I will leave this poem so you can work out the depth and the breadth of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll send out the poems and the links to the various participants' projects and websites very soon. Thank you all for being with us here this evening. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much.
Good night and good morning.